What is up, everybody? Solomon here. Super excited to be with Genfinity, interviewing a multitude of builders across Web3. This is the first Constellation Hypercast we've done probably in a few weeks. I know the Constellation DAG ecosystem. Super excited about the launch of PacaSwap. Luckily, we have Joao and Alex with us today. Probably the two best individuals to talk about the launch. It's been about a week. So this podcast is basically called The Rise of PacaSwap. Not financial advice from Genfinity's end. We have a long-standing relationship with Constellation, but this is going to be a really cool one. Lots of stats to get into. I guess let's get started. Joao and Alex, you guys have a week snapshot of the DEX. It's live. Key takeaways, because I know that this has been like not only grassroots, but like an amazing kind of effort, and a lot of the traction you guys are getting is pretty wild to witness. So whoever wants to go first.
Should I go? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty blown away by how this went, Although I had really high expectations, I think it really turned out to be much better than I was expecting, because of course, like the DEX has been something the community has been asking for a long time already. It's something that was definitely missing in our ecosystem, and finally we were able to release it in the form of PacaSwap. And I have to say the way the community really adopted the platform, they started trading, they started providing liquidity, trying to understand the tokenomics. I think it just engaged most of our community around this single project. So I think it's been an amazing week to see.
Alex, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. It's been a long road to get here. Actually, we started development on this just a little bit over a year ago, on some of the network level changes that were needed. Conceptualizing everything that's happening, how we're going to have cross metagraphs, the cross chain swaps as this kind of extra layer of complexity, have it all work. And just seeing it launch this last week, seeing users get active, they're adding liquidity to the liquidity pools, they're participating in governance, and of course doing a lot of swaps. So really cool to see it come together and go live.
So you mentioned like cross metagraph swaps, and I would love if one of you guys, and we'll get into some of the stats here because the stats are really impressive for kind of week one. Talk a little bit just in broad strokes, like for those that don't know what a metagraph is, each kind of metagraph on Constellation is essentially like its own network. So PacaSwap is kind of similar. It's kind of like its own network, right? Like, can you just talk about what opportunities that offers up for a decentralized exchange, how these other networks interact, how new networks might interact with a DEX, just kind of in broad strokes here, and whichever you guys wants to take it. I know that's a really loaded, long form question.
Yeah. Well, the high level is, so if you're not familiar with metagraphs, you can think of them as maybe subnets within Constellation. So they have their own chain, and that chain folds into Constellation's global hypergraph chain. So they're operating independently, but then also able to share information through the hypergraph's global chain. And PacaSwap is built as a metagraph, so it's not any sort of like special case situation on the network. It's a metagraph like any other. It's making use of these new transaction types that we released with Constellation v3 back in I guess May, and delegated spending, the ability to send atomic pairs of transactions, which is a really important one. So when a swap goes through on the network, it locks funds on each of the other chains the tokens are hosted on, and then executes that swap in a single atomic pair of transactions. So you can't have one side that goes through and the other side fails. They'll either both go through or fail. So that's kind of the high level of how it works. And it through kind of the development process of this, we released these more kind of general network primitives that allow it to happen, and those can be used for a lot of other things as well by any metagraph. So it really opens up a lot of possibilities for future development of new projects as well.
Awesome. And I guess Joao, from I know one of the kind of the things that's been pretty awesome to watch, and I don't think we've been in a podcast since watching what kind of happened with Upsider. Just as kind of a sidebar here, I think Upsider broke into, and you know better than I do, but on Base, so Coinbase's Base network, I think Upsider broke into the top 5, maybe top 4 or 3 agentic AI agents on the entire Base network. What is it kind of like to have something that's you've orchestrated, leveraging Constellation, like to be talking about Constellation technology like for years and what metagraphs can do, and to like watch that happen kind of in practice and in real time?
I think like the Upsider ends up being an expression of what you can do in Web3 on Constellation. Like Alex was explaining about the metagraphs, they are essentially their own network. So what happened with the Upsider there was it was born on Base as a token, but where I really think it came to fruition was when the metagraph was created, where essentially it allowed the community to be more involved, so they can delegate DAG. That gives rewards to the Upsider, that in turn can airdrop some rewards to people that delegate. But mainly what it enabled was the ability to do feeless peer-to-peer transactions. So essentially, now the Upsider, you can tag him on Twitter, you can talk to him, and you can actually ask him to do transactions on the Constellation network on your behalf. And this is only possible because we have a peer-to-peer feeless network. So essentially, there's no gas fees or costs to send those transactions. And so this use case, which is essentially like a micro tipping use case, really works because the Upsider migrated to a metagraph. And then, of course, it gives me the tools to have the community interact much more with the project. In the future, they'll be able to become node validators so they can delegate. And then the final piece was that I only had on Base was the ability for people to trade the token. And now with PacaSwap, what we saw actually is a lot of people were using the bridge to bring the Upsider token to the L0 version of it, which is the Constellation version. And they have actually been providing a lot of liquidity. I think that's like almost $100,000 in liquidity on Constellation, which is almost more than there was on Base, you know? And so this happened without any VCs, without any market makers. This is actually community members from Constellation, which I think we can say is one of the best communities in crypto. Of course, I'm biased, but still, I think the numbers do showcase that people were waiting for this. They were waiting for a platform where they could put their tokens to work, where they could trade, they could be involved. And I mean, I think as the Upsider benefited from this, I think any other project looking to build on Constellation or already building is going to benefit a lot from the fact that we now have a DEX and they can make their token liquid.
What are what are your guys' thoughts on the stats 1 week in? Do they exceed expectations of where you guys thought the PacaSwap would be at? Yeah.
So I can talk on that. It exceeded a lot my expectations. As I said, so we didn't have any. So we had the airdrop that was 100% airdrop to the community. So people that holded LTX, DAG, and Paca. So they received the token. So there were no VCs, no insiders, no anything. It was a completely fair launch. And so what I expected was for the DEX to be successful, but I thought like things would be slow at the beginning, you know, because we are talking about individuals here and not people that have a lot of experience on Web3, on trading, on providing liquidity. But what we saw was a move from our community to actively start participating. And I need to give a shout out to a lot of people in the community that have been explaining how liquidity works, what they can do with the token. So I think that really helped people to feel comfortable with using the platform. But I was not expecting $1 million in volume for the first 7 days, that's for sure. And also in terms of liquidity, we started with $100,000 and we have 650,000, so like 6x in 7 days. It's almost doubling every day. So compared to the initial value, of course. But I mean, it's pretty remarkable. You know, I'm really, really surprised in a nice way.
Yeah, this is probably going to hit 1 million volume if it doesn't do it today. very, very shortly. Pretty cool to see. And I think one of the things that's interesting, at least from my standpoint, kind of from an outsider standpoint, is like in crypto, we always talk about like these level playing fields that don't necessarily exist. I think what Base has kind of done, and your guys' ability to get boots on the ground as an ecosystem and as a community, with an ecosystem like Base, and then Base opens up kind of the bridging aspects and all that stuff. It kind of like eliminates some of the gatekeeping that occurs, and it's interesting to watch when people rally together and just do what they want to do in this space without, I think some of the, we see sometimes with some of these networks like loaded stats, like numbers for the sake of numbers. And I think real numbers, like, I don't know about you guys, but like if I was building, and I'm not a dev or anything, I would rather have 5 real users than 1,000 fake numbers. So I think it's really cool to see. I mean, Alex, what are your thoughts on week 1 stats here? And I'm sure you're relieved that everything's kind of been built at this point in time, but the building never stops.
Yeah, I mean, it's great numbers to see that. I like round numbers, so that $1 million number is a pretty good one to see. And I guess the other thing is that this is just sort of early numbers, people kind of trying things out and using the DEX, but we have a whole bunch of other mechanisms that will kick in that are going to create more activity. There's the governance system, which users can vote to boost certain liquidity pools and give them additional rewards. So kind of gamifying, allowing certain projects to get more funding, kind of ramp up how much liquidity is available to them, which opens up additional mechanism for Lattice, who was airdropped. That group was airdropped a large percentage of the swap tokens. So Lattice will become a bribing platform where projects can offer up bribes to the members, and then whichever ones win, they'll get a large percentage of the votes going through that governance system. So that kicks off the first round of voting is going on now, but then the first boosts will happen in, I guess, 3 weeks now, so once per month. It's another kind of interesting one that is part of this is that the collateral that the validators in the network are required to put up, essentially like their stake in a proof of stake system, is in this case in the form of providing liquidity to the swap DAG pool, and there'll be different pools that are favored as a requirement for that, but there's sort of this built-in liquidity that will always be available to those pools because all the validators are putting that up as part of their stake. So a lot of cool mechanisms in this that I think we're just going to see kind of ramp up and make it even more active.
So I guess one thing that's interesting for me is like, well, first off, I will give you guys, I think kudos, like the amount. I know in crypto, like community and general consensus is always like, what have you done for me? Not lately, but like literally yesterday. And like, I think in the past year and a half, like, from Genfinity's standpoint, we've been media partners with you guys since the tail end of 2023, I want to say. So I was had the opportunity to watch, the first Metagraph go live with Door, and there's obviously been partnerships and stuff like that since then, but Metagraph going live, and then you kind of had Metanomics, and you had all these different kind of cogs in the wheel that started kind of happening at once, and delegated staking, obviously another really big one for the whole ecosystem. And now to see this kind of DEX go live, I guess the question that I have is, now that you guys have a snapshot of this stuff, and I'm sure a lot of these kind of big deliverables from a development standpoint are kind of out there in the wild, what types of opportunities do you think that all of this stuff kind of combined is going to, not speculative as far as like token or anything like that, just ecosystem wise, what type of opportunities do you think this opens up, having kind of the pillars in place? I know that's, again, a loaded, broad question. Joe, I'll go with you first.
Yeah, so even before going into that question, I think there's another stat that I want to highlight in there, which is the validators. Essentially, what it brought to the network, and it's one of the first DEXs where you actually have people decentralizing the DEX itself, because the whole metagraph is completely decentralized in a way that's run by several different validators and not by just the team that built it. So at the moment of launch, the network or the metagraph was essentially decentralized, and we have actively 20 people that are running node validators and securing the metagraph and essentially guaranteeing that it's working. And our plan is to onboard up to 100 validators. We'll do that in batches as we go along. But I think it's another important piece of the metagraph where anyone from the community can run a node as long as they have the collateral. Essentially, that's what's happening here. And so going to your question, which is, so what does this enable? I think it just puts us at the same level as all the other networks. Okay, so this was, as I said, a piece that was missing in our ecosystem. We were extremely dependent on centralized exchanges for them to list our tokens. As we are not an EVM chain, it was really hard to get an exchange to add support to it. Maybe they would support that, but then for them to support L0 tokens was a whole different story. And so what we did was, if you're starting, you can start without a centralized exchange. Of course, they are still important. They are still a big goal for us. But at least the startup moment, you can go to market with your token and not be dependent on a centralized exchange. And then, what is, as Alex said, like, this is not the native DEX of the ecosystem that everyone has to use. So the way this was built by the team is that essentially anyone could go there and just create a copy of PacaSwap and create their own DEX. So there's nothing proprietary or exclusive about this. It doesn't have special permissions on the network or special things that only Constellation developers know about. It's essentially just leveraging everything that Constellation V3 brought. And so if someone wants to create a new DEX, they can just go there and leverage the same functions. And when I say create a new DEX, they could create any other DeFi product that exists on other networks. So lending platforms, even just aggregators, anything could now be created just because of the features that were released by the team. So I think it just opened the door for DeFi as a whole.
I think it's like a testament to kind of like the cypherpunk like ethos of like Web3 in general. It's like if if gatekeeping is occurring and all this other crap and that we talk about it not occurring in crypto, but it is, it's like we're just going to build it and people are just going to use whatever we build anyways. I remember looking at so for those watching, Metagraph's obviously just another name for layer 1 network basically, or its own network. But I remember whenever this was Door, and then I remember when it was Door and Alpaca, and then Door, Alpaca, I think Federal, and like all of these different metagraphs coming online. So now there's 10 on here. It's going to, number one, that's like an awesome achievement in and of itself, but it's going to be really cool. I think you're going to probably start seeing like this get a little bit out of control. I would imagine like after it gets to like 20 or 30, it's going to be hard to kind of keep track of some of this stuff. So yeah, kudos to you guys. And as Joao mentioned, like PacaSwap on Constellation is its own network. So it's like literally decentralized by the community. Like there are community members, whoever wants to validate PacaSwap can validate PacaSwap and do all the other stuff that is, needed. Anyways, I don't have too much other stuff, guys. I know that the Mika, you guys recently had the Mika white paper that came out, which is also awesome. So markets and crypto assets. So some Europe type aspects there. What else is coming down the pipeline? Alex, I'm sure you're still building stuff or at least optimizing stuff, but yeah, wherever you guys want to take it as we ramp down.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just on the kind of the previous point, I think the big thing that PacaSwap gives to the network is just liquidity, and Constellation has always had these liquidity challenges, especially around metagraphs, where we're trying to push for developers to build these projects and develop something really cool, launch a token. But how are you going to launch a token if you don't have a way to give that token value? And so being able to swap it gives it value. You don't have to go through centralized exchanges. So I think we're going to see a lot more activity of projects saying, hey, this actually makes sense to do now because we can launch the token and use some of these sort of interesting systems for launching their own validator network. How are they going to fund that? So there's a lot more possibility now with that.
We'll talk about, I mean, one thing that's interesting to me is that there is a differentiator, because there's, other networks where essentially, there's projects that launch a token, but then they have to somehow give that token value and then sustain it and everything else. Whereas Constellation, there's projects that can build a metagraph and launch and then essentially try to attract funding. And that's, I think, like different than what exists in other ecosystems, because you have kind of these obviously within the ecosystem in Stardust, there's grants and stuff like that, but you are kind of like trying to, in a way, compete for community funding and community delegation. And I think that is a huge differentiator from what exists out there right now. So whichever you guys wants to maybe broadly talk about that, I think it's a huge value add.
So maybe I can even talk from experience with the Upsider, where essentially the delegation rewards that the community, the users that delegate to the Upsider nodes, they help cover the costs of all the APIs and all the integrations for the Upsider. So there's fixed costs with the servers that I'm running the metagraph on to keep the website, the domain, the X API, then the ChatGPT API and the Perplexity API. So it's just a lot of small things that add up at the end of the month. And with the delegation rewards, I'm almost able to cover everything. So for small projects to kickstart, it's a really, really big incentive. Maybe if you're a bigger project, of course, it's not going to cover your costs as a whole, but it's going to cut the costs down. And reduce the risk, and maybe it gives you more an incentive to start building it. And so I think what we were able to achieve here is we have given the tools for the projects to launch their projects. Okay, so you have full support for the team when you're building it. We usually create a dedicated channel for the team to work with us. We are there if they have any questions. Then you can directly go to the community and start getting some funding as delegation rewards. You could even use your token to incentivize more people to delegate to you. And then you can go into the DEX. You can incentivize the community to provide liquidity to your token, or you could provide it yourself. So essentially, I think everything that's blockchain related, you can get them by building on Constellation. And then you can just focus on your product and help offering the best experience for your user or community.
Yeah, I think where there's like a clear separator there is it really does put, so like where in normal, I guess, crypto and what everybody's kind of used to is like, I believe in this project, so I'm going to buy this token that just launched yesterday, and hopefully the price of this token goes up, because if it goes down, I'm not going to believe in the project anymore. That's like kind of like the general ethos of Web3, wherein, okay, I believe in what, this is like an example, I believe in what the Upsider is doing, so I'm going to delegate my DAG to this project. And if Upsider doesn't deliver, I'm just going to switch my delegation to a different project that I do believe in, which I think like opens up, I feel like a lot of the times in crypto, people almost feel trapped. It's almost like Stockholm syndrome in a way, where it's like, I've been a fan of this project for so long and I'm way too over invested in the token, so I kind of can't do whatever I want to do. But if you really flip that whole model on its head and say, look, you have long-term community members and you have people that want to build, not everybody's going to succeed, but the community wants to participate. It lets the community participate, but then switch that participation based on what's going on in the network, which I think is like wildly innovative and makes sense. I'm going to ramp it down here, guys, because I told you guys this was going to be shorter. But closing thoughts, what you guys are excited about for the future, and thank you guys for joining me today. I'll start with Alex.
Yeah, we got some big stuff in the works. I'm really excited about some of the kind of secondary projects we're launching. We're launching a project called Digital Evidence that will have its own metagraph, and also some centralized components as well. But the goal there is just to integrate with as many traditional Web 2 services as we can, and provide the service of putting data on chain. So you're anchoring your data in time and place, or time and snapshot, and just making it that really simple, easy to use, and it's one of these things we've looked at where we, with the framework that we have and with metagraphs, you can build these really complex systems and do all these interesting things. But what a lot of people are looking for is actually the most simple, which is they want to put a lot of data on chain and make it really easy to reference. And so we have this system optimized for that, for collecting a lot of data and making it really easy for those users through just a traditional REST API. So really excited for that to launch. Got some secondary projects along with that as well. Real estate ledger, which is a real estate use case that will be a user of digital evidence. Been working with some partners on getting that built, and just a lot of activity around digital evidence. So excited for that one in the next month or so.
Joel, I'm trying to pull up something because I've seen here's a real estate ledger for those that want to check it out on Medium. Property records on chain. This is something I know that I think obviously like a huge topic in crypto and blockchain, like RWAs, tokenized, and real estate, just scratching the surface. But I know Ben Jorgensen and like multiple different interviews has given that when you do a mortgage, the documentation touches like 40 or 50 different hands. So I'm not surprised to see real estate ledger initiatives coming about, but pretty cool to see in digital evidence as well. Joel, closing thoughts here, and thank you guys both for joining today.
Yeah, I think besides everything that Alex mentioned, I think we have a couple of weeks ahead of just improving our products overall, right? So what we got with PacaSwap is the need for people to actually see more of the data, more of the things that are happening on chain. And so I think the focus will be on bringing that to the user. So the ability to check the prices in a more clear way, improving our mobile support in some parts of the network. So again, it's just now taking the rest of our ecosystem up to the new level that we achieved. And then when the new products come again, we bring everything up again, and we just go to the moon in terms of development.
Awesome. Well, I definitely want to mention, check out genfinity.io. You can learn more about PacaSwap, Constellation V3 as well. You can go learn more about PacaSwap directly at pacaswap.com. x.com/constellation with ones. Dagnum is a great resource in the community, Dagnum_PI. Joal's an awesome resource, Joal PFC. Alex at CodeBrandis. Go check out the DAG Explorer too if you want a real snapshot of the state of kind of the whole ecosystem, mainnet.dagexplorer.io, and digital evidence at constellationnetwork.io/digital tech evidence. Joel and Alex, thank you so much for joining today. And congrats. I'm sure that we'll see probably $1 million in volume here very soon, if not today. So I was hoping, I like refreshed it while I was in this meeting. I'm like, I wonder if it got there. But yeah, kudos to you guys on all the building. And thank you guys so much for joining today, and hang out with me for a second. I'm going to get these recordings.